All right, it is Friday, September 15th, and welcome back to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action for the indexes this week. An interesting and volatile week to be sure, starting with the NASDAQ futures. Had a interesting open, very green, then the next day immediately selling all that gaining down again. Kind of retested this fib level at 15,423 and moved back up. Couldn't break above that plateau, and so today, Friday, we retraced below this entire range. So things look like they could be rolling over, but if we look at the 4-hour, still looks like potentially making a higher high, though we don't get our two closes above. So that is why, in my opinion, we were sent down to look for support. Now, the actual low of today being around this 15,370-ish mark. Seen a lot of interest in that area in the past. That could be a hold. Personally, I don't believe that the 4-hour loses the trend until it loses 15,310-ish. Call it 15,300 even if you want. We see a lot of interest at that level in the past, a lot of wicking up into that range. So we could see price come all the way back down here, and this would still look like a constructive higher low on the 4-hour to fuel the leg higher on the NASDAQ. As far as the daily is concerned, it does look like that would remain intact as an uptrend if 15,000 even held. If that didn't hold at 15,000, we came all the way back down there and that broke, we're looking at fill in this box or potentially making an even lower low. So watch out for that. I feel like we've been saying this a lot recently, but we're going to have to see what happens next week. But for now, looks like we either need to hold here or at 15,300 or hold at 15,000. Otherwise, we're going to end up seeing lower. So let's go ahead and take it and look at the S&P futures. A lot of similar price action. Obviously the indexes tend to trade together. This one, interestingly, kind of held at its level. So not quite broken down yet. We could still see this gap from the contract change filled, and that would still look like that constructive higher low on the 4-hour. The daily here also would remain intact, probably around 4,430 or 4,440-ish rather. That would still be a nice constructive higher low. If we lose this 4,380 level, it's going to look pretty ugly, and we're going to look to fill this gap all the way down here, probably at 4,300, if not making it another low. Do you have any thoughts on those particular ideas, Price?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the reasons. This is it's kind of right here. This is the low that produced that high. So that's why we're expecting it to hold that on the daily, and if it doesn't, that's why we expect this gap fill here. But you can just watch the trends happen and either hold or not, and that tells you which direction. So
yeah, the interesting thing too that is a little bit divergent from both. Obviously, just a product of their different holdings is, like I mentioned, we didn't really get our two closes above on the 4-hour on the NASDAQ here. I don't really consider these two closes above here. But on the S&P, we certainly did. So that could be indicative of why this held here. So we'll just have to see going forward if that ends up just being a hold here to produce for the next leg higher, or if we need to go lower for support. But right now, I personally think that it's a good trade to kind of look for a 4-hour hold here and a daily hold as well, a bit lower. But we'll have to see. Let's go ahead and do the RTY. Why don't you cover this one for us?
Yeah, absolutely. We did see it. Let's see here on the weekly. Let's look at that real quick. It's kind of a boring week here, but what we do have is this green candle on the daily, and we came up above these highs here in these wicks, and we're holding. So we are seeing some kind of upward movement here. What we want to see is it make it back to 19,000 and hold up there, and even make a higher high at 1940-ish. The movement we see here is super expected. There's nothing about this that's spooky. It just came down to this level and is proceeding back up. You can see that pretty well on the 4 hour too. And the 4 hours also showing up, and it even held the low here that produced the high. So that's very good for more movement continuing up on the 4 hour trend, and as well as the higher trends.
Yeah, I actually really like the 4 hour on the RTY, and I think that it's pretty likely that this hold will produce a move to 1900. Not saying that it'll blast through there, but I could see it coming back down there and then looking for something around like 1875 for a hold as support to kind of blast through there on the next leg up. It could also blast through 1900, but you know, that's kind of my thought process. If we're gonna see this trend of the 4 hour higher high and higher low, that kind of is textbook in that regard, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and move on to gold if you want to cover that as well. You've been right more than I have on that.
So it was actually pretty interesting. We had, let's see, this is Monday here, this green candle, and it didn't hold this range. It went down to the lower range and held there, which is, you know, same thing, very expected because of, on the daily, we see this is the low that produced the high. So when it came back down, it rejected, but held the beginning of the trend. So which is this level right in here, and that's what we see. We saw it, you know, kind of tink that and continue up. So we haven't seen, you know, multiple closes here, but we do expect Monday and Tuesday to be, you know, somewhere in the 1940s is what I would say.
Yeah, and I do like that, even though it's not like necessarily a definitive close. I think some people might be spooked out about this wick getting sold off on the high there, but it's just still a nice close above that level. So that's one of the two that we look for as a gained confirmation for that idea. It looks good on the daily, and I do like that this got bought up at that 1924 level. So gold looks good for higher. I like gold right now.
Absolutely.
Good. Let's go ahead and look at the Dow. Not too different than the other indexes, right? Interestingly, it does show somewhat of a hold here, right? So Monday barely, opening green, and then a big day on Thursday, and that just getting sold off today, but not breaking below. So it just looks like a hold right now. If this ends up holding, then we could see higher. I could see this potentially coming back down to 34,700, or even filling the gap down here at 34,600, but that would still be constructive for higher. Again, Dow's not really too different than any of the other indexes. We're just kind of at these points where we need to see certain levels hold or make a new low. Otherwise, things do look good for higher still. We haven't really broken the uptrend yet, so nothing too exciting to say about the Dow just yet. Let's go ahead and look at oil. I think we similarly don't have a ton to say about this. It's just playing out the way that we've kind of been saying for a while now, right? That we've kind of broken out of this range and we're on our way to 93.50. We could see a little bit of pullbacks here and there. We've seen some consolidation on the way, but right now, I mean, especially today's price action, actually tried to retrace lower and got bought up and ended at the high. That's super bullish and tells me we're definitely going to see 93.50 pretty soon. Not calling for it to just go straight up from there, of course, but we're certainly on our way there. I would be surprised if we don't see that in the next month or two, but we'll have to see. Do you see anything else that stands out about oil, or we've kind of beaten that to a dead horse at this point?
No, we're just making new highs. I did want to take a quick on the weekly. It's pretty good. I mean, you see this level here that we're closing up above that level, which confirms all of these as very strong support. So that's why when you said make it to 93.50, I think to take the words out of your mouth is we'd be looking at holding this if it were to retrace and then continue higher, probably all the way to 103 if it were to make it up to make that kind of.
Yeah, and we could get there. We'll have to see. There's been a lot of talk of inflation stuff recently. Not that we haven't been talking about that all over the market sentiment in the last 2 years or so, but you know, oil is one of those inflationary indicators, so something to watch and would certainly make sense in that context. But technically speaking, it's more what we care about. Definitely looks good for 93.50. I could see it blasting through there if things get pretty bad, but at the same time, it'd be totally normal and to be expected to retrace to this area actually that you've drawn, or the box down here, and then fuel that leg higher. But the important thing is that we definitely have broken out of this like essentially year-long consolidation and are moving higher. So it's all to be expected. Let's go ahead and cover the dollar. Again, I think you're more in tune with what the dollar is doing than I am. Why don't you cover this one for us?
This is, similar to the oil that we're seeing. We saw it consolidate down here and hold this support and continue higher. And on the weekly, it looks really interesting that we're coming to test these highs, these wicks, as well as this level here that was lost. So that's already been tested before. That's why it's a dashed red line. Honestly, I kind of expect us to go straight through it. I don't see why that wouldn't be a thing. There's all this fuel from down here. Lots of people would say, what about that lower low? It doesn't matter. That was just a liquidity slurp, and you can see that on the higher time frame. It didn't close down there on the monthly, and the Dixie is following the monthly trend, and it's very much alive. So obviously not immediately, but we're still expecting 109, more likely than a retracement back down below 100 for sure.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite possible that it goes past that 105.78, call that 105.8, but it has been tested on multiple time frames a lot. I could see that happening, especially given how strong this move has been. It doesn't mean that we won't get to 109 if that ends up, pulling back down. I think we covered this briefly last week when we saw the first weekly close above as a new higher high in a long time. But it could still, now that the trend is essentially confirmed back to an uptrend, you could see anything down in here, the 102s, it could come all the way back down there, and that would still be a nice higher low to fuel the next leg up toward those highs on the Dixie again. But if there's a lot of strength, continued strength this move, you could definitely see it blow through there. We'll just have to see. I definitely think that we're going to 109. I just don't know how long that's going to take, but right now it looks pretty inevitable. So watch out for that going forward. And lastly, KRE. Not too much to cover here. Kind of just had like a range week, right? It started down, ended up moving up, going back down again, and we ended mostly break even, right? Pretty close to where we opened. We've only moved, what is that, like 0.15, like 15 cents right there. That's like nothing. So pretty much KRE just kind of chilling at the range. This is somewhat of an important level, right? It needs to kind of hold in here or go quite a bit lower for support, but we'll just have to see what's going on with the banks going forward. I think we've both talked about how we still think that the banks are going to 56.5, but who knows how long that's going to take. Unless you see anything else as a new development on this chart, I don't think there's too much to talk about on KRE.
Yep, it just remained right in that range. It's just ranging for now, and hope to see more action next Friday.
Yeah, certainly. All right, well, that was a nice quick one. Again, somewhat of an interesting week, but nothing out of the ordinary or unexpected. Let's go ahead and wrap up for now. So thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you do like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
See you next time.